Afternoon, everyone. Okay, we are live. Welcome, everybody. We've got any apologies for absence, Neil.
Thanks, the Brighton Matthew project.
Okay, all recorded. Any declarations of interest from councillors at this stage? Okay, so we're moving to item 3, which is the 2024-25 service plan mid-year reviews, and we are starting with the finance service areas. Before I go any further, just to remind everyone, the scrutiny committee is being conducted on a hybrid basis in accordance with the Local Government and Elections Wales Act, which will operate alongside the Council standing orders. The Council standing orders and code of conduct will apply at all times during the virtual meeting in the same way as ordinary meetings, and members should conduct themselves accordingly. If those people online wish to indicate my intention to speak, can I please ask you to switch your cameras on and let me know. Otherwise, please keep your cameras off and muted when you're not speaking to ensure there's no background noise. A recorded version of this meeting will be uploaded to public viewing as soon as possible after the meeting. Welsh translation of the proceedings can be provided upon request. Images and sound recording may also be used for training purposes within the council. Sorry, over to the officers' presentations. I don't think we've got the cabinet member for this service area. So, Reece, did you want to introduce or?
Yeah, just Jay, very and sort of probably my introduction for all three of them. So very brief introduction from me. So thanks very much, committee. So today you've got 3 mid-year service plan reviews for finance, people policy and transformation and standards. It's an update of where we against the objectives we've got and actions across the year. Some of the performance measures you'll find in the report are annual ones, so they don't report you at this point, but it gives you a general progress, and happy for the committee to ask questions around that. We'll respond appropriately. Myron Jew with his management team, and he can introduce those now.
Thanks.
Yeah, so the last 6 months really has been a continuation for us of about 6 months before that, which is some key vacancies and some long-term sickness has been a real challenge for the service area, and that is improving, but it's still an issue that we've got. Notwithstanding though that, we have made good progress in most of our objectives and in most of our programs and projects. Notably, we implemented the new finance system this April, not without its teething issues, but bedding in as you would expect, but making some good progress on most of those and the details of those on the reports. Performance has been mixed, but again in the same areas. You know, the customer services response times continues to be quite challenging, and the collection or council tax and business rate is kind of to amber. We're not quite there, albeit the performance of this council's revenue teams has increased significantly compared to Wales situation, so that's quite pleasing as well. But most of our PIs after those areas are actually green as well. So, given the challenges that we've got, certainly with sickness and long-term vacancies, especially since they are actually focused on accountancy mainly, and actually within accountancy in a very small team as well. We've done reasonably well, I think, and a number of these areas are kind of making reasonable progress. Happy to take any questions, Jeff.
Thanks, Arian. Councillor Reece.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Mario. While we're talking about the staff numbers and retention, etc. Can you just, on page 16 of the report, where you talk through finance headcounts 24-25 from April through to September, with obviously changing in numbers in staff, etc. Then the organisational starters and leavers, with 18 started and 9 left. Can you just explain where you're at, where you got the figures from for those two sections, please, first? Because is that saying organisational starters and leavers, does that have an impact on your finance headcount? Because you've gone up 176 from 171 in 6 months, but it says you've taken 18 starters off.
Yeah, those data are supplied to us by HR colleagues, I presume from the iTrends system. I don't know if Kevin's here, but he could explain where those figures have come from in some detail. Yeah, I can understand your kind of query. So that's something that we'll have to take away and reconcile for you, I think.
Okay. And if we can stay on staff numbers then, because there's a couple of issues that you say. Obviously, you've got problems in finishing completion of the new finance system. It's in amber. It's at 90%. So, are this sort of is the lack of staff going to prevent that from being finalised? But again, coming back to the fact that you potentially reduced your staff numbers according to those charts anyway. So, which is it? Is it we're not going to have staff, or we're happy with where we're at to finish the project with the staff numbers we've got?
Yeah, I mean, unless Kevin here says differently, I think that those finance headcounts numbers is because of vacancies at different times of the year when they're reporting. Like every service area, you've always got some degree of vacancy. And in fact, the budget that we set needs you to have vacancies because we actually have a budget target for vacancies. People generally live with an ongoing level of vacancies. They're not directly linked to the achievements of our objectives generally in terms of the finance system that you mentioned. The project team there has been in place. So we implemented the system in April. There were 2 modules, debtors and assets, that weren't implemented on day 1. Debtors will be implemented next Monday, in fact, and that will be the last of the major modules then of the new system implemented. The assets part of it, because of pressure on that central technical team, they simply cannot implement that part of the new system yet. Again, that's probably not because of vacancies or sickness in that team as well. It's just that they're a very small team, and we're struggling with just creating the space and time for them to do this elements of work because of other work pressures that they've got. But when the debtors system is working next Monday onwards, that's 95+% of the new system implemented and operational. There's just that last asset module left to do, which we will have to, which is not it's a shame, but it's not a deal breaker for us, and we will need to schedule the time needed to get that in the first 6 months of the new financial year. Obviously, that technical team is very busy in that period, closing the year's accounts, etc. So it's a really tricky balancing act with that central technical team. We are struggling to make any for development in that team because they literally go from one thing to another. But we're going to have to sort of try and find sort of space to get this work done.
Can I just sorry, can I just finish off then with, if you've got a vacancy for an assistant accountant, as you said, assistant head of finance.
Yes, yeah.
So if that vacant, there's a pot of money there ready for that. Can you use that to put somebody in place on a temporary basis? Can you get the agency, or you get additional staff in use that pot of money for
Yeah,
you
we-
applied for assistant head of finance.
We didn't do that for the assistant head of finance role because they left at a reasonably good time for us. It was late summer, I think, or midsummer. So the system had already been implemented, and that role was really crucial for that. But they were here in April, May, and June. Year end was kind of done and dusted. We hadn't quite started the medium term financial planning work. It was something that let's try and recruit and we'll manage. Now, as it happens, the recruitment efforts that we did, it didn't bring up any appropriate candidates. So we've had to go through a second round, but using an external agency to help us with that. So that was successful. New person starts in January, but that does mean that we've had about 5 months now, 6 months without an assistant head of finance. That is now showing, in terms of the workload that I've got, but also, this project. So I'm now keeping in touch with the project manager, not as much as maybe the assistant head of finance was, but I've had to sort of try and carve out some space in my diary to keep in touch with a few key things. I think that the implementation of the debtors module and the assets module, my feeling is that would still be where we are now, because the challenge is not with that role. The challenge is with that small technical team in terms of the assets module.
Yeah.
Sorry, yes, but just 2 bits. I think what you've seen with a lot of services is that we are staffed appropriately for the work we're trying to do on any given day. And, things over and above that, then we can create some capacity issues. And I think that's what Mike was describing. Go back and see your first question. The column, the graph on the right hand side are new starters to the organisation, people who've left the organisation. They don't include, so my room within his service here, we've got people transferring in from other bits of the organisation or transferring out of finance into other bits of the organisation. So any discrepancy, you see the figures are because of that. About 18 new starters and 18 left, so that gives you the 9, doesn't it? That's different to the headcount figure, but that's probably because somebody's transferred either out or into somewhere else in the organisation. They can do 2 different things. I think that's it.
Could they be broken down there to show that?
Yeah, I'm sure we could provide some additional information, but essentially, so Myron, for instance, I know I don't think it's this financial year, somebody from accountancy left, it went to Fleet, they wouldn't have counted in the leavers from the organisation, if they just transferred to another. Does that make sense?
Starts to get there, yes.
Yeah.
But that's
It's a recurring theme though, across each service area that the figures don't tally up.
Yeah, well, it's not because it's not because it's an error, it's because that they just counted 2 different things, but if you want that additional information, I'm sure we can.
Well, there was another question around this, wasn't there? We've got these obviously some data, some statistics on people leaving, and we've raised this before. Why are they leaving? Because to us, there seems to be it's just a waste of resources to count why people are leaving if we don't know why, or rather have the exit interviews, which we don't really take. But if there's no information which is recorded and conclusions that can be drawn from that, it seems rather an effort collecting it.
Probably pick that up within Tracy Kevin's service areas. That's okay. So unless you want to respond there.
I'll respond. I think
Yeah.
it might be fixed over up here, but as a scrutiny committee, one of your roles is looking at HR, and that might be something you want to look at in more depth. But I know there is a process of the exit interviews. It's not compulsory. You can't make people have an exit interview.
No, but perhaps those that information about people transferring internally as you go to the new organisation would come out in that process. This is why I'm raising it there.
Yeah, I think as a committee, if you want to have that probably deeper analysis on that. So it's not going to come out of it's essentially giving you a sort of bellwether with that service areas. But if that's a specifically sort of what you want to do as a committee, I'm sure we can do that.
in terms of the finance service, though, you'll be aware that we had a big staff exodus from audits a while ago. That was nearly all due to promotion opportunities, either in other councils or Welsh Government. Yeah. We generally lose our senior accountants to the health service. So because they pay better.
Yeah, I've noticed this in the past.
Yeah, and and I've got another senior finance accountancy colleague leaving us at Christmas time for a role that is one peg lower in the structure, but being paid the same money. So, it's an easier job for the same money. So that's why we lose the accountants, because NHS and the civil service pay better. And we had one. The assistant head of finance we've been asking about went for a promotion. So that was a shame for us in Newport, because we were gearing him up for something better here in Newport. Absolutely right, exactly right. I mean, that's an important part of all of our roles here, really, is to try and have the appropriate structures in place so that you've got some development opportunities, but also then to give other people ready to move. But of course, other opportunities come up locally, and that's the way it is. So I'll start again in January, and such that goes well. And then we lose people from customer services generally to the organisation, because they know a lot about the organisation because of their kind of role. And that's, whilst that is a nuisance in some ways, it's also quite positive, because it's a really good grounding in what happens across the organisation, and people are able to progress into those roles. So we do lose in internal staff, in particular from customer services, fairly stable in procurement, and we do lose from kind of revenue as well.
We've had 3 retirements this year.
Yeah.
Since I've had 3 staff retire since
Right.
nothing untoward. They were just of that age.
Yes.
So that's been our kind of story about vacancies in the last 12 months: promotions, pay, opportunities. Yeah. So,
Can I follow the question you answered on the parts of the system that you're not going to be able to implement because the team haven't had the time to do that?
Yeah.
And you said you're going to carve out time early part of next year to do that.
Yeah.
I guess the obvious question is, you couldn't do it this year. What makes you think you're going to do it next year?
I cannot give a definitive answer to you today that I wouldn't be able to, but it's something that we need to do. So we were heading towards getting the annual accounts analysed this week. Something happened. We can't do that. That's been shifted into January. So we are having to really work hard at planning resources and time, in particular in that team there. And there's a lot of things about our year-end procedures that we need to improve, but we haven't got the capacity or the headspace at the moment to sort of sit down and do that, because you do need to sort of sit back. But we haven't got anybody that can sit back and do that. So we are going to have to do it. It's just the case that we'll have to just sit down and find, about a week. So it's not a huge amount of time, but it's about a week, 10 days, whereby the senior finance business partner or the lead business partners go ahead and do what they need to do. There's no choice about it, so we're going to just have to let things go. Well, we'll just have to, we will do it, but it's not obvious yet as to when and how. But we will do it.
Thank you.
Councillor.
Yeah, I wanted to put in a couple of compliments. Actually, was in the first part there was an objective 2 and objective 4. And objective 2 was a range of services and the reopening and face to face. And I mean, people have heard me very long before about the importance of not closing down in any way which would block or present a challenge to people who are perhaps not able to embrace IT fully because of the range, poverty may be one thing, financial resources, maybe age, maybe just the access to training, confidence, lots of different reasons. So I'm really pleased that we've actually got that down in the objectives. And the other one, objective 4, love this one, long-term internal audit. Having that, bringing that function back in, because I mean that does have the potential to save large amounts of money funding, which would be wonderful to be able to know that we were covering more aspects of that.
Yeah, so there'll be a report comes and audits this Thursday to ask their comments, which will then be incorporated into the cabinet paper with a recommendation as to how we take forward that long-term provision, and then make it happen. Yeah.
Good, thank you.
Councillor Fiber, just on sickness, got about there a lot. How many workers have we actually got off on long-term sick, and are there any work-related sickness like stress?
Yeah, so most of our long-term sickness, I can speak for accountancy where I've got a fair amount of detailed knowledge. Most of that, it was 50-50 split. It was stress, about half of it, and half of it was underlying medical conditions. The problem with that was that it was concentrated, and that has had an impact. The service area in particular, our kind of place-based services in the last 4 to 6 months have had a much lower level of support than they would normally want and expect. That's because we have the manager, the team leader, business partners. It was really concentrated in that area, and I think that was a problem. Split about 50, and we've had some people in customer services. There were underlying kind of medical issues.
Yes, a lot of
Are we talking
hospitalisations early in the year.
Yeah, well, there's got
No. I think we've got 2 left. One is undergoing mutual termination, and our other lady is going through cancer treatment. So we may look at health through time. But HR is supporting us through.
Our sickness levels this year are it's about the council average. We're always under. Most corporate services generally tends to be under the council average, but actually this year finance is about the same as the council average, which for us is a real. But it's not short-term sickness. It is this long-term, which is very different.
Have you engaging with occupational health?
I think that.
Occupational health, they all engage.
Oh, yeah.
So do we get any feedback on how helpful people find occupational health? Sorry, am I you want me to go into the other bit on this?
No, I suppose I think all that's really useful, and it's the sort of conversations we have as a management team. I just think that would probably be better dealt with as a focus of a separate conversation, because actually all you're looking at is a bear in mind finance, people policy, transformation, and global standards are probably the three of the smaller service areas you've got. So the sickness levels and the impact of that are probably very different than they are in some of the others. And it's things like that. I think we'd probably talk about occupational health, our well-being at work policy, the impacts of that. I think all of those would probably be better off we could just get more dig into some of those things.
Can we bring that back?
You can absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a forward work program.
It's within the remit of this committee, and I think you probably get more. We brought them back previously and recruitment and retention, didn't we? So
Yeah.
I think you'd probably be able to get into more in that. The point I was going to make is organisationally, when we look at other local authorities, our sickness levels are really low comparatively. However, we have got a pretty small workforce. compared to other local authorities as well. So when we have a particularly key, when there are individual people doing undertaking individual roles, when we people off in those areas, it does a big organisation impact. So, I think it's those sort of things you want to get into if you have a conversation about it. It's actually really the impact associated with some of this sickness and actually what's the organisation doing around that.
Yeah. So if we thought
Is that- is that-
yeah, right, thank you.
Councillor Rees?
Thank you, Chair. Byron, if I can pick up on page 27, point 7, we're producing a new strategic plan for procurement 2025 to 2029. You said yourself that time is our challenge to have the plan ready. It's going to be done by the end of December. And you've got 10% in amber. What's your thought process to actually try and achieve that? Or you're not even going to miss the time completely?
Yeah, it has been a challenge getting that strategic plan together. We've actually pushed the deadline back now to the end of the financial year, to the end of March. And I'm currently approximately 65–70% of the way there now. So most of the strategic plan is drafted. I've got 1 or 2 sections to finish. Then it needs to go obviously through Myriam and then the various political reporting. So I'm quite confident it'll be up and running and fully approved by the end of the financial year.
This is what we were talking about to democratic services, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or last week.
Yeah.
So 10% is probably not a fair reflection of where you're at now.
No, it was a fair reflection of where I was at the end of September.
Yeah.
But obviously, I tried to find time to work on it, which I have, and making progress now.
And the UK regs have been pushed back as well.
No.
Yeah. So it was going to be.
Reach from there.
28th of October, the new procurement regs which come into force, but they're now the timetable for the 24th of February.
So that has allowed us a bit of leeway to sort of shift our contract standing orders, our procurement strategy to be dovetailed with that.
Any further questions for finance service area?
Sorry, just another one. Page 29 across to 30, but talking about the call waiting times are obviously are particularly high if you look at the differences in timings on there. It's basically a strange question, but what is the message that's on hold? What do people hear whilst they're waiting?
There's an automated message that tells them where they are in the queue and how long approximately. And then the other messages are about what they can do online.
Okay, do we use that message then to sell any sort of services or any benefits of what we've got to council or things like to direct them and say, look, events, go to what's online? Can we use it anyway to the benefit of them?
We don't tend to do much promotional stuff on there because we found that if we pack on the messages, people get frustrated with hearing lots of messages. So we kind of try and do it where possible. We might be able to divert some people away from queuing onto the website, especially with council tax. But we are going live next Monday with the new telephony system. So we have additional functionality that we can explore with that as well.
Yeah, I pick up that point on the same, so I wasn't ready because you came in with all onto the race. So 2 comments from me really. The times are going backwards, not forwards, which is sort of disappointing. And I don't because we had the customer services review last time we were here, so I appreciate there are some plans in sort of tow and have started. It's more on the targets for me. So to have a target of sort of 20 minutes wait for the council tax and a 5-minute wait to answer the phone, I just don't think they're good enough, and we should target much better than that.
Yeah.
And I appreciate the targets need to be smart. But are we just setting the bar way too low here for our staff in terms of saying that we'll take 20 minutes before we can answer your query comes cuts and 5 minutes to answer the phone generally?
Yeah, that kind of is reality. We are in January. We are working with ministers at the moment to move council tax bills into council. So it's anticipated that because their job is council tax, they should be able to answer the calls a lot quicker. It means that they can answer the call in its entirety, because at the moment where they are quite complex, we are having to ring the back office for some advice. And, you know, they'll be able to start with them from start to finish in council tax. They'll remain on 656, 656. So Emma's staff are being trained on the new telephony system. So that we'll continue, that we'll be able to report on it. So we should see those changes starting January. And I think with the new telephony system, we should be able to do a bit more with call handling around that as well. So we should start to see those improve now. Once we move council tax out, we're back to being full complement of staff as well. We are managing our sickness. So I feel quite optimistic that we will be back to those figures.
It's important to say though that we've still got the same number of resources, yeah. So we'll be moving 3 posts, I think, from customer services into Emma's team. Emma's working on, which Emma can explain on some improvements to how we deal with customer calls. But at the end of the day, this is a simple equation of volume of calls versus the resources that we've got to answer the calls and deal with them. We think the moving it is going to make an improvement. That's why we're doing it. But I wouldn't sit here today and say to you, in 12 months' time, that's going to be 5 minutes, because if the volumes are still the same volumes and the resources are still the same resources, we'll make an improvement. But I'm not too sure that if it's going to be groundbreaking in, you know, we'll reduce that target from 20 minutes down to 5. We'll certainly improve it also.
But the leader was just coming before this. I mean, to me, the starting point is the target where do you want it to get to, and hopefully you can come back. And then what resource do you need to achieve the target, as opposed to what can we achieve with the people that we've got. So, you know, and I don't know if you were going to give it on the same point, but that to me, yeah, let's go back and look at what resource do we need to be better.
We've obviously got a project starting now, which will improve matters across the council. And a lot of the stuff around using the council, using the website, etc., better. And we have a better website now. They'll be part of the improvements that Emma's going to be putting in. So before we throw money at it, let's improve how we're doing things first. Let's see where that takes us to, which is more of an efficiency approach. And then we'll see where we are in 12 months' time, I think.
Customer service wasn't where it should be, right? So when I came into the cabinet, it's clear, you know, we had a few pressures, the systems weren't working as they're supposed to. It wasn't efficient. It wasn't efficient for staff. It wasn't efficient for our residents. It was absolutely crystal clear. So we've engaged in that reform now. I think it was 330,000 released for customer services review. 320, sorry. Maybe give you 10 grand more than that.
Yeah.
But because we had to improve it, it was clear as day, but not only for our residents, but for our staff who were bearing the brunt of that frustration that people would get when they would call the council. So we're on that journey of improvement, and where we can, we're improving our technology, the telephony system, but also we are making a big push for online. And an online is short of our 3,500 target. But I want that target to be high. We should be ambitious with this, because we really need to move ourselves into the 21st century. And I think what people expect is the same old council doing the same old things the same old way. And we're not in that place. I know you, Chair, particularly understand that. And I think the officers are definitely there. And it's up to me as a political leader to offer that support politically and the money. But as Myrian says, we're given the resources for the transformation, not baseline resources yet, but I don't know my budget. But if we can, I will resource them properly to deliver what we all expect, you all expect, and the residents expect. That's what I hope to see over the coming year.
Yeah, but if you just briefly mention some of the stuff that we'll
Yeah, in terms of council tax, obviously one of the main touch points, people contacting the council. I think what we've seen over the last couple of years is that there has been a big shift to online, and our customers do, by and large, try and self-serve. The leaders mentioned the number of subscribers that we have. Those are people who subscribe to our service to enable them to go and manage their own account. Now we are building on that. That's a new thing. But what we have in addition to that, we have a number of standalone website forms, which are self-service forms. So change of address now, customer does change of address online. That comes through to my team as a practically finished piece of work, which means it's a lot quicker for my team to do. It's just some security checks, etc., in the back office that we have to do, and it's much quicker for the customer. Now that is now the most popular way that people tell us to change of address. We don't get people writing in as often. Even emails now are declining because of some of the other efficiencies we've put in. So already we're seeing a faster turnaround of people getting, all they want is their final bill at the end of the day to know where they, how much they've got to settle their account. The point you make about the telephones and the wait times, they're all incredibly valid, and it's a common bone of contention with customers, and it's no reflection on Kerry's staff or my staff. It's down to the numbers and the complexity of the calls that people are coming to us with. Because we've moved a lot of the simple things to self-service, we've made it very accessible on the website. What we're seeing now is that the calls coming through tend to be more complicated, longer, less simple than maybe they were a few years back, which is why they do take longer to resolve, and why Kerry's team, customer services team, by and large, have to involve council tax staff with the vast majority of calls that they answer. So you're taking 2 staff resources for 1 call, and you're still keeping people on the line. So what we're currently planning is to take over the council tax calls and change our processes to ensure that the customer, by and large, only needs to speak to 1 person. Ideally, we will be directing those people towards the online facilities. So we will be telling them, do you know what? While you're on the phone, I'll ping you the form. It's the quickest way to resolve it. But we will have a judgment call with staff will decide, after talking to the customer, whether or not that's suitable. Because if you're talking to my parents, for example, it's most definitely not suitable. They need somebody to guide them, and they will do it there and then on the phone. And we'll be changing some processes and putting some additional security in place to ensure that customers can achieve everything in that 1 call wherever possible. It won't be possible in 100% of cases, but in the majority of them, that's what we intend to do. And I think if we can do that, 2 things should flow out of it. First should be that we'll see improved response times. Now, I don't know what they will look like yet, but I'm hoping that over time that we can improve. But secondly, and I think as important, if not more important, is that we will see an improved outcome for the customer. So the customer may well not see masses of time shaved off the response time, but at the end of it, they're not still being asked to send an email in or still being asked to fill a form in. They will have been concluded, and therefore the chain stops there. And that's better for my team because we're not getting, a call to deal with and an email or a letter or a form, but we've dealt with it there and then, and therefore, ending the need for continued correspondence. So that's my 2 aims, and I think that if we plan it carefully and make sure everybody's trained with the new telephony, etc. And it's going to be, it's going to take a little while to bed in. But my hope is that we will start to see some improvements, incremental improvements.
And that's the blueprints really for the customer services improvements project, which is working through the council's areas over the next 18 months or so, and just changing approach, changing attitudes as well sometimes.
Yeah.
And using what we've got better. We've got an improved website. We've invested in that, but we now need to put stuff in it and not onto it that will is focused on customer services. and more online slick approaches to it. So, you know, the customer service one is the blueprint really for us, and we'll be doing that across the whole council, you know, wherever's appropriate in those areas. So fingers crossed that it all goes well. Thank you on that.
We sure did come in.
Sorry, I suppose my point was really without, obviously we've been here with the customer service review will come back.
Yeah, I didn't want to dwell on it. It was the target issue.
I think, the point I was crystallising in my head as throughout the conversation. I think one of the things we need to think about with that, and useful for Scrutiny's comments on that as we go through the review. Our objective here, because it would be great if we had more resources, but we haven't got more resources, and it's difficult to argue we need more resources in when we've got the issue we have in housing and social care and within schools, etc. So it's a really challenging position. But as you know, what we're trying to do is make it as easy as possible for people to do all the stuff they need to do with us interactively via online systems rather than coming to the face-to-face centre or phoning. Face-to-face and phoning should be for those people who've got the more complex issues that require that input. And actually, the amount of time they spend waiting on a telephone is a really inappropriate measure of that. So I think we probably need to think about the sort of measures we've got in place that show the performance of customer services, the numbers of people we're dealing with, the numbers of issues we resolve in the time in which we can do that. Jeremy, I think it's a pretty blunt measure of something that's becoming really, really complex because actually, if we were achieving what we want to achieve, which is actually people phone us up for the really complex things, it would stand to reason the length of time for those calls would increase. Do you know what I mean? So it's a bit. So I think as part of that work, we probably need to look at actually what we're measuring and how we report.
No,
I think it's just as elected members, I think especially those who have been long-standing would all agree that the inquiries that we've got to get from our constituents are considerably more complex, involve more time. So, we can really understand what you're talking about. And I wish there was some measure that could be introduced for elected members where we could say, well, you could, there was some fast track that we could divert people to, because it certainly is something. I mean, Councillor Deb Davis is behind us. I think she'd probably agree with that. It's just got messier, and it seems to be something. It seems to be another one of these COVID effects. Really, I just think that everybody's got something very difficult happen through that time, which seems to have had a knock-on effect with people's demands on services.
It will be interesting. I mean, we'll go into detail with this as you look at your next updates to that review. But there are lots of the complications that Kerry's team are getting now are probably becoming too complicated for your team because they require a wider network of support. Yeah. So that's what the review towards us. Emma's points about the basically a transactional service, council tax and India, even they're becoming complicated in terms of the situations.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the stuff that we get for social care and housing, they're in another level again.
It isn't just about partners.
Yeah. And you're listening to us, aren't you, as well?
Partnerships now, isn't it? Partners that
Yeah.
we need to engage with as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're going to come up against this as the implementation of the review. Yeah, and that will probably spawn a bigger change.
The committee again sort of there's regular reviews on the report anyway, and apologies, I didn't intend to go into all that. Purely the target setting, so it sort of got us sidetracked a bit. So
It's kind of you can't really separate them sometimes. I can.
Councillor Rees.
Thanks. Just want to take on a point that you said there. It's good to hear that you say that it's not just a blanket, pass people off, here's the form, go and fill it in. You make the judgment call and talk to the people and decide, well, actually, they need a bit of help to work through. Because obviously, as we know, I don't disagree with the leader at all, in as much as we've got to move towards digital, but we can't leave behind those that can't afford to. So it is good to hear that you're doing that.
We always have and we always will. As I say, the majority of our people changing address now, it's done online. It's the vast majority of the way people do it, but not everybody can. And those that can't or won't or whatever they've got, you know, other means, they can do it face to face with a form at the customer contact centre in the library, or we will be able to do it transactionally over the telephone when we pick those up. But we will still be trying to divert people to self-service because it's still the simplest for all.
It was just on that point, actually. We're in that spot where we have a certain age cohort want that support and need that support, as I think Councillor Thomas, Councillor Weeks were referring to, and we're about us offering that support. But also, don't forget, we've got our under 16s growing at over 10%. We expect everything online. Their whole life is online. If you know, so we've got to make sure we cater for those who struggle with technology. But are we there for that generation coming through? What they expect from a council service? No, you know, quickly on my phone, do, bang, move on with my life. And so we've got to get our services there for them as well, for the next generation coming through.
One of us, different. On page 14 of the statement that are on the side. Council Littell, we've got the second chart down the page, that balance in the council's medium-term budget. Corporate risk, we've got an inherent risk score of 20, got a target score of 10, which is obviously the amber figure. What is 10? What does 10 look like though? How will you know when you've got a 10 as opposed to a 20, which is obviously catastrophic?
I think the oh, go on then. Sorry.
It's because we have 1 year settlements, and each year we have huge cost pressures every year that we're all familiar with. I'm sure Myra got to deal with, but we don't know what we're going to get in our budget right till Christmas around about this time. So how can you plan for the medium term on a sustainable basis? And it's mine, correct me any point here. You don't know what you're going to get over the medium term boost of income, even though we know our cost pressures are going up each and every year due to service demand and all the things we've probably talked about in this committee. So for me, hopefully 10 will be reached actually due to the UK government giving us 3-year budget settlements, which we hopefully will get to the Welsh government, which hopefully the Welsh government will set out 3-year plans, because at least we know what will be coming down the line over the medium term. I'm not saying that'll get us to 10, but that will help get us to 10, because I don't know in any organisation how you can plan for, Councillor Reeks, you know, how can you plan for the medium term in any industry, in any sector? You don't know what your budget's going to be. Still now, I don't know what my budget's going to be, or so let alone next year and the year after. So I don't know how you get it to 10 unless we know that.
Right. Absolutely. So a 10 would require us to have a medium-term balanced financial plan. And the prerequisites to that, I believe, is, as the leader said, medium-term funding, because then we know the scale of the challenge.
But if we did actually have a 10, it would be more like green, wouldn't it, on this, presumably? We would be getting there.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. But as the leader said, we need prerequisites to that is at least medium-term funding certainty.
Right.
Because it's very difficult to ask councils to plan in the medium term and to make what are difficult decisions when actually the history tells you that you just don't know where that's going, and it may not be as bad as you think. So, and every council in Wales, and I would say across the UK, struggles with exactly the same issue. Exactly the same issue.
So I'm not going to ask you now to describe a 20. All right, we'll.
Well, the 20 years, I'm happy to answer that. 20 years, me walking to the post and Myron telling me we've got £20 million deficit. There's a cost pressures, but we don't know what our income will be. That's 20. Now that's for any leader what you want to hear on your second day. And I don't think it's any, and actually it has a really negative effect, not only on our finance team, but also all staff morale. Because then you're asking all our staff to make horrific decisions, which they might not have to make. So you decimate morale over that term, but end up not having to. All because we don't know what our income will be. And so that's 20 we're living in year on year. So I'm hoping the UK government deliver on that 3 year. Then I hope the Welsh government, does it go to the Welsh government and the Welsh government then should implement it, or is it a diktat to all of the UK?
It will be for Welsh government themselves to decide if they want to give us then a 2 year.
Well, I'll be lobbying very, very hard the Welsh government to give us that medium term stability if the UK government do it. In the March budget, I think the plan is set out.
Yeah, it'll be the spring budget, yeah, so absolutely right, it'll be a big push, I think. Even if it's not exactly an indicative amount, would be better than nothing.
Any other questions for finance service area? Okay, I'm grateful for everybody's time and detailed answers. Thank you very much.
BPT.
No, you see.
Like musical chairs. This is doing the rest of the way.
Just while everybody's settling, councillors, if we could just wrap up the recommendations for the finance service area, so we've got for the minute. So, you can remind me where we are.
Yeah, it was just in the start as a media section, came to the about requesting additional clarity on the data, so we can replace that. Note to thank the scrutiny advisory reports for the cost request for the data can be out off the board of the programme.
Any other recommendations we want to make?
Yes, there's a meeting and to future unit program.
Yeah, yeah. Was there any other recommendations we wanted to make?
I think recognise. Well, so I appreciate I appreciate the comment about more face-to-face or sustaining face-to-face services. And the other one is about the there's only a 12 the building of the internal audit resource.
Comments? Yeah, thank you. Okay, welcome everybody. Second part of the agenda. So we've got, I just wanted the full name of the service area, that's why I was scrolling through those. Get on people policy and transformation, is that right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Still I've got the name. So people policy and transformation. We've got a couple of cabinet members here, more than a couple. So welcome all. I mean, I hope you don't all propose to sort of do an introduction, or if you sort of coordinated beforehand. So feel free for whoever's going to make a start, and then we can pass over accordingly. Or if none of you want to make a start, then we can pass over to Reece and Tracy.
Everyone's looking at me.
Yes.
I'm here because of the IT and the digital side chair and the transformational side, which is very close to my heart. So happy to take any questions or queries from the committee on that. It's a big agenda, and I think it will get bigger as the years go on for all of us, because I think you've heard me say this ad nauseum now. Regardless of the politics, all elected members realise that we're facing a different world, an ever-changing world that's changing very, very fast. And we have to make the council adaptable and agile, to keep up and adjust, to continue to serve our communities in the way we all want to serve them. So key to that will be the transformation on digital piece. So that's why I'm here, Chair.
Thanks.
Okay, leading on from that, I'm here because part of my portfolio is HR. Linda kindly extended my
You're
portfolio
welcome.
to take us to HR. Well, so through the summer, we've focused on wellness at work policy, which is supporting people in work. And some of that is actually how to access that training, which is now using AI. So certainly links in with the leaders portfolio and that we're actually developing that sort of transformational type work. And also focusing in the summer is the introduction of the drug and alcohol policy and how that's working to support people that work within Newport City Council. So essentially that's what the work has been undertaken during the summer. Yes, I think things are going well because we meet regularly with the via the Employee Partnership Forum with our unions, and they are generally very satisfied with the level of support that's being offered to staff. And there's always that open opportunity for honest conversations. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm here because my remit covers assets and specifically here the Newport Council Property Estate, which I appreciate has got the high inherent risk score, but there's a lot of work, as you'll see from the report, that's ongoing. We're working on the transformation of Newport North to the LATCO, so an awful lot of work going on behind the scenes with that, as you'll be aware, Chair. And obviously the asset rationalisation project is ongoing, and again a lot of work going on there, and we've created a strategic asset management group to ensure that all departments have a strong say with regards to how our properties are used. And then there's also the Civic Centre and the one-day closure in the context of potentially 2-day closure, but at the moment we're doing a trial run. So there's a number of big projects of work that are ongoing to try and address these issues.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm here to first of all thank the officers in the portfolio that I manage for all their hard work, particularly in the areas of Welsh language and strategic equalities. Over to you. Thank you.
Thanks. We've also got Councillor Horton on the line. It's the cabinet member for this area. So I don't know if you wanted to also add anything, Councillor Horton.
Hi there, everyone. Sorry, I did want to bring you my lovely cold today. I'm here in my capacity as cabinet member for Culture and Communications. So if you've got any questions on anything, obviously feel free to ask them.
Thank you. Okay, Rhys, do you want to hand over to Tracy, or do you want to pitch in as well? Yeah.
I got nothing left to say. I'll just introduce, thanks everyone, and really appreciate the cabinet members being here. And there's a lot of us, so this really reflects the complexity of the service, Chair, some of which has been introduced. We're everything from HR, health and safety, staff wellbeing, assets, digital, SOS partnership, complaints, info security. We support the exec teams, intelligence, data, performance and risk. We're the people responsible for pulling these reports together that you see today. Lots of reports to governance and audit committee, transformation, policy, partnership work, qualities of Welsh communications, marketing, web and design. I did have to go through the bits of my notes. I'd also just mention, without going background what everyone said, we work with as many as 9 regulators in any one year, and we've got 7 of our own on behalf of the organisation reports that we take to generally overview management scrutiny on a range of the subjects that we're reporting on today, and we take another set of reports to governance and audit, again reflecting the complexity of the service. We're really pleased this year with some of the progress around equalities and Welsh language in particular, and engagement in training there reflected in that performance. Obviously the
digital transformation, which is key but remains a challenge. Pleased with progress on the new website, and some really challenging work around assets and the Newport News transition. But that is only really a thin slice of what we do. I'll probably pause there and take questions. Chair.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, Tracy. Councillor Riggs, first of all.
First of all, I'm straight into this one. It's really moving towards the digital age, and we're doing what we can to get everything online and improve efficiency. My concern is around safety, and page 48, it mentions it actually mentions Microsoft, I think it's Microsoft Copilot, right in this bottom right corner. On the 12th of November, I received to my personal email account from somebody from Newport City Homes, copying in people across various different county councils and city councils, saying that we joined the co-pilot group. Now, this shouldn't have gone out according to SRS, but it's turned up. So I've been connected in somehow. I'm not even on this communications list, and it's turned up in my personal email account, not even my council account, personal one. And I had more than one of these emails come through as well. So can you reassure us that we're going to have safety, we're going to have security, and things like this won't actually happen where data is just shared out and it shouldn't be?
Did you say that came from Newport City Homes?
The email was from, I won't say their name, but it's somebody at Newport City Homes.
My guess is it wasn't Newport City
No,
Homes.
I guess,
My guess.
yes, I understand.
So I guess there's no escaping new technologies there. Copilot's a really brilliant Microsoft solution. Without seeing that example, my guess is that is a clever piece of spam that has picked up. It's not from Newport City Homes, even if the names are right. If I give you a different example, the payroll department here had an email from me that looked like me asking for a change regarding my pay. So it's really clever stuff that can be done. But we're going to see across the world, really, those challenges around cyber security and misuse of personal data. We all get the numbers of junk mail are super high. I'd be very surprised if that came.
It's not junk mail. SRS sent an email out on the 12th again. Hello everyone, we wanted to address an email you may receive Tuesday to you joined the Copilot COB group, which it was. Please do show this email sent due to an error in the Copilot membership group rules.
I thought you said it came from Newport City Homes, sorry, councillor.
It's it's
because they don't work with Newport City Homes.
No, but somebody on there was Newport City Homes, and the other one, Raz, Newport Mine. So SRS then telling us that this thing had started and it shouldn't have started.
Yeah, I think, if I may, this is a specific example, but I think the point is firstly seeking some assurance on security. So
we need to make sure.
I take the point, if I may, just in terms of sort of addressing the point, and then perhaps sort of Chris can link in with whoever's the sort of IT manager or whatever to look at that specific example. But I think the question is the committee seeking some assurance on security in terms of the Copilot. Do you want to?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know anything about the case, and I'm sure Mark and the team will look at it to get underneath it. I think one of your questions was, can I assure you, or can we assure you this will never happen again? No.
No, probably won't happen. Not
No.
never happen again.
Well, I think that was your phrase.
That we're actually safe as a city council, so we don't have any comebacks on ourselves as city council.
So we're as safe as we can be. But any public organisation that tells you and promises you, or anyone, that we will not be subject to an attack is lying. Okay, so I would love to give you that assurance, and we something that I do sleep, stay awake at night is we could be subject to this at any point. And I know organisations, I won't say, have experienced huge attacks. Public organisations being targeted by states. So this is the real life world we live in, unfortunately. And so I think your general point about safety is we can't offer you guarantee, but I know with SRS it's on top of our agenda. It's something I know me and Tracy and the whole team and Mark worry about all the time. And we do our utmost to keep all our certificates up to date and get the latest intelligence about who's being attacked and what gates they're using to attack us on. But there'll be one day where they get us. And we can't fight states. This is not possible. So we're doing all we can. Safety is our number one concern. In terms of the new world, there are pros and cons. So it's one of the major cons of the digital era and with AI, it's going to get better. They're going to get better at getting better at impersonating people, not just as organizations, but as individuals. AIs are going to be picking up all these things. So it is a double-edged sword, AI. I'm just being perfectly honest for all of us. It'll be massive leaps for us in terms of productivity, hopefully, automating our services, but people want to use it nefariously. It's a great tool as well.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. I suppose just a couple of points from me. So I think we need to be able to differentiate between the sort of hostile sort of actions, like attack and errors, because they're not the same. So that one that definitely looks like it was an error. From a safety situation, it's pretty limited, apart from email addresses. Because actually it's just sending out information. One of the reasons we use Copilot, because Copilot is part of the Microsoft family, so actually a lot of issues around some of the online AI things you can use, and actually where the data you're providing that goes, because it's outside of control. It's within the Microsoft family, it's errors will always happen, and I think, Mark can talk about some of the things we do around, making sure that we educate people in order to try and reach those as much as we possibly can. From the other side of it, obviously we have this criminality behind that, and in the news of the last couple of days about the increased threat from Russia as a result of what's going on in Ukraine, because a lot of the threat comes from state-sponsored actors, and obviously we can't in a public forum talk about the measures we have in place in order to mitigate those risks, but we do all, I think, than a lot of organisations in respect of that, and that's part because some of you might remember that in 2016 we did have a ransomware attack authority because of the swift actions of staff in IT that was minimised significantly. So we always press
does that sort of provide you with the assurance that you need?
Do you want to Mark, just to add a little bit to echo what we're doing? We said do an annual information risk report, which is designed to make this kind of as transparent as it can be, share technical details and weaknesses and so forth, but it's around the measures we put in place to address threats that are out there. And there's various aspects. We've been doing that for a number of years. We have really good engagement with vendors and the rest of the organisation with that. I could go into specific details, but I hope that gives the assurance in terms of our kind of ongoing processes.
Do you have any? Excuse me. Did you have anything else on this particular series you want to raise?
Yeah, the drug and alcohol policy that Councillor that David's referred to. Do we have any more specific reports on that? Are we going to be sort of analysing those ourselves and looking at, do we need to make improvements, etc.?
You say you, so
yeah, do you want me to come in? No, we've been discussing it, and I'll probably hand over to Kevin. So we've worked carefully with a small number of services on pilot work to make sure we're getting that right. And we may need to do some more specific work based on the risks around certain services. So if you've got a service that's operating machinery, no one should be drinking, but there are different risks. Kev, do you just want to set out where we are?
Yeah, I think just to pick up on the drug and alcohol testing policy, and the testing policy is a with pause testing policy at the moment. So actually, you need to suspect something has happened or something has happened to a fresh test. I think what Tracy's saying there is actually there's maybe services where we need to think about, is it more routine, goods vehicles, those sorts of things that perhaps are higher risk, but at the moment are pilots you outlined. implemented now across the organisation with calls. We'll continue to review that to understand if there's significant risks we need to pick up.
And it's going to tend to be a supportive approach when you're working with individuals as well. So it's enabling working with.
I was just trying to understand whether it was, say, across the board thing, or rather than just on a needs by needs basis, really.
And it is a policy. We already had a policy that said what one should and shouldn't do. So this is about testing. It's a further enhancement of what we already had. And once that's bedded in, we'll review whether we need to take that a step further, working really closely with the unions.
Councillor Thomas.
I've got a question about another policy, but just on that one, also need to tell you about, there has never been a time when so many young women from their 20s or 20 onwards are actually being diagnosed with severe liver damage, and they're not recognising it, but it's actually, they don't realise that their pattern of behaviour even brings them into it for that sort of thing. So I mean, it is important that organisations take this very seriously and put something in place for them. I wanted to ask about, the leader kindly suggested that I go on a conference a couple of months ago on the he obviously thought on the 28th of October, a new piece of legislation was brought in for public services to ensure that they had a policy on sexual violence in the workplace. And I'm just wondering if we got any further with that. I know I had a conversation with Reece about before I went as well. Are we any further along? Because I think we discussed it, didn't we? We recognised it was a risk within all our organisations, and we are in no way protected or can make assumptions about what the level is within the organisation. But I'm just wondering if we've managed to put anything in place by now.
I'll hand over to Kevin, but that's a really, really important question.
Well, yes, I know. I thought it is very appropriate today. I'm asking it. Yeah.
So in terms of the new legislation, we already had a number of policies existing to support reporting, toleration, etc. So we were happy that 20th of October we had what we needed as an organisation to make sure it. What has continued since then is to establish actually what are the next steps that I am pushing the e-learning facility to provide more support to staff, what's the correct behaviours that come with it, looking at employee code of conduct to establish how we specifically referencing things like sexual harassment and then covering off general discrimination and equality. So we've got things in place that were already there that met the legislation. We were already going over above. There's a bit of the work to do with Janet's team, within the qualities team to make sure we're taking that. There's a paper going to CFT December to bring them up to speed on the direction of that.
Something that Callum said this morning when the flag was raised, he said that he hoped that flag would give more women the courage and the impetus to actually report things in. And we did talk about this, didn't we, Reece? I mean, that is where we may be missing. We just don't know how many people we're missing out and how we can encourage further reporting. But that's probably the most important element of this, isn't it? Getting women to disclose and men to disclose, obviously, as well. Where they're being victimised.
And I think there's two things in there. So we're working on it as an NCC, and the start today was obviously the flag raising with White Ribbon, but we also got a seminar going on this Thursday trying to encourage people to seek support and how to seek support. And there'll be somebody here for council tomorrow, but also we're really closely with the regional team, so the regional violence teams from Domestic Abuse and Sexual Violence team. And I know the team's been in place since 2015. Obviously, I was in the team before I came here. And their real focus is on promotion and making sure that people know that help is available, how they can access it. And we are looking at unprecedented numbers in relation to domestic abuse in particular at the moment. But some of that is because of the work that we've been doing in Gwent around kind of encouraging people to report. So even though it looks like the crime's going up, and the crimes are going up, it's just about kind of we need to caveat that as well on with the information that we've been doing lots of work to be able
That's
to
always
support
been
people to
seen,
come forward.
that's been seen as a positive thing,
Yes.
isn't it? When your numbers go up, it means more people are reporting in.
Yeah,
It's something I'd recommend share with the police when the crowd meeting took place, because I'm aware that we actually get very good feedback as a rule from the police. And this is, I think, because of the way in which the police do tend to work a bit in silos with different things and in different aspects of criminality. But I think, if we can get that engagement with the police for our individual areas and perhaps more to report at a ward level, that will put us in a stronger position perhaps to encourage people to report locally.
I did want to say something. I think Cabinet Member wants to say something. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, thank you. Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I think one of the things as well is that there was the white ribbon flag raising ceremony, and what we're trying to do is to draw attention to this problem of violence against women, and who perpetrates that? Well, the message is that it's men that perpetrates that, and men really have got to look to themselves and try and change their behaviour. And this is a message of men calling one another out, maybe for inappropriate behaviour. And I think the more that is said, the better. And that's why we are raising, and I want to pay tribute as well to the work of officers on getting a white ribbon accreditation for what has been done and what the council is doing. So it's a message saying, yeah, the council is doing well, but we all have got more to do.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Thanks, Chair. And first on that, I really agree. I'm conscious that we're a small part of a big organisational effort with lots of other services in. So Janice is taking the work on that. But there's lots of others involved. I just want to come back to the HR stuff, the wellbeing, the drug and alcohol, and the new policies coming in. Sometimes seem that we're a disparate group of people around the table doing different things here. And these are really good examples of where the equalities and policy agenda and the HR service and also the digital and automation, because the training we do for staff actually now uses digital, uses bots to explain things, and you wouldn't necessarily know that to look at them, but they are real people. And it's a really good example of how the service can come together and add value to the component parts. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Tracy.
Just to add, I've asked as well that we circulate training for all elected members to refresh many of elected members of our policies and procedures, and to help elected members when they see it, do they go to in helping address what they've seen.
Yeah, fair point. I mean, the legislation is, aimed at or also takes into account to protecting our employees from third parties in terms of sexual harassment. So how do we cover off that element of it in terms of the policy that we've got? Because the current policies, I sort of see them sort of look at people sort of suffering from either domestic abuse, which is sort of been the topic of conversation. The policy itself is about how do you protect your employees from third parties, so the people they work with, social workers, housing officers out in the streets and others. So how does the policy specifically sort of protect staff in terms of that? And there is also a requirement for a risk assessment as well in legislation. Is that a document that sort of will be ratified by cabinet, or is that an internal sort of delegated authority?
Yeah, it's to do with the risk assessment. Yeah, so, in terms of the wider community aspect, that is much harder to manage, because what action can you take against individual schools? But
Got to go into the schools.
yeah,
Got to get it there.
I think the general principle in those policies and legislation is that those things aren't tolerated, and the council can support that colleague with the support they need to help to deal with that. And where it can take an issue forward, whether it's forwarding to the police or whatever that looks like, then obviously we fully support that. But there is a limit to how much the council can kind of enforce externally those things.
And definitely for employees, and you know, we'll have to work with Kevin to see where we are for that. But I think we shouldn't miss elected members in this. We are effectively lone workers many a times, particularly women. You know, they can be easily targeted, and we see across local government women of all political parties being particularly targeted for sexual comments, violent comments. And if we're going to ever get to challenge the diversity issue in local government through via elected members, we can't miss that piece, because I often think to myself sometimes with some of the stuff I see, why would someone put themselves in this firing line? And for sometimes men, we just think, oh well, we'll just put up with it. Oh well, you know, I'll be all right. But we've got to think of other people who will be absolutely intimidated, and that's the purpose of those attacks, to intimidate, put people off. So I think, you know, we need to think of that, not only us, but the whole collective WLGA family. I raised it in WLGA last week, actually. So I saw some other colleagues get like threatened, their life threatened. And we really need to think that through as a council, for our employees, but also our elected members, because we all want people to feel confident to stand, don't we? And not feel intimidated in their views.
Yeah, I agree. And my point was really not sort of, you know, what are you going to do against, but how do you get the message out that we won't tolerate it? That's my point. So in terms of comms, these are the things that we won't tolerate being done to our staff, and the schools is an absolute, you know, fair point. This is where our lines are. These are the things that, you know, are not acceptable. And how do you, because that is sort of telling people exactly sort of how we look after our people, isn't it? So,
Thanks, Chair. And there's loads of layers to that, I think. So another example is in Mark's area in the complaints team, we're currently looking at what constitutes an unacceptable action from a resident, from a customer. When is that line crossed, and what can we do to protect that member of staff, look after that member of staff, but also deal with you know, a challenging issue in the community. And there'll be lots and lots of examples of those where the policy kind of needs to lead out and influence those other working arrangements. And clearly that's not a one-off hit. We'll need to continue to do that, raise awareness through training, work with managers and that's
Councillor Rees. Nice. Different subject now from Tracy. First up, the staff check-ins. Looking at where you wanted to be and what you actually are, like brilliant. It's well over 90% each time. So well done on that, because it's good to see that you are doing the check-ins given the size of obviously the department that's you've got. I'm a bit confused. I mean, if you look then at page 67, you've got percentage of managers undertaking regular check-ins. Mid-year, that's at 67.9%, and it shows a level of consistency. Mid-year review shows a level of consistency with check-ins. Check-ins are well over 90%. So we've got some disparity between figures. If we just explain a little bit.
And yeah, that is important. So the figures, the workforce figures at the top of the plan, then my own service. So what we do in our service, so they're our figures, and then, you know, clearly we're pleased with that, although we feel that we should set the example because that's within our opinion. The text within the document, we are also responsible for encouraging, monitoring, pushing those across the organisation to do this. So I think we sat here probably 18 months ago, something like that, and we were bubbling around the 50% mark, and we've done a lot of work there, and, you know, credit to Kevin and his team, done a lot of work there to work through how we can make these work for different departments, but also where check-ins were happening, that they're actually recorded. We've got one system to record everything and making sure that's recorded on that system. So the organisation is not quite doing as well as we are in our service. That said, if you're in a service where people work out in the field, clearly it's more challenging, and, you know, I appreciate the variances there. I think as a corporate centre probably need to be at that higher end. Okay, so, did you want to add it? Sorry.
Yeah, just add, I think, yeah, probably 24 months before that, we were sort of at 18%. I think, yeah, we got to 50 and got to 65. We did get that, yeah, because we have worked with service areas to put that processes in place for them to enable that.
It should be set at that 67.9%, and should that bar be set higher there and that be an amber, so to give yourself something more to work towards? Are we accepting that because that's in green, that that's okay?
Yeah, and we talked about that a lot because previously I think the target was 80%. We were always red, always. So we trying to work through that in a staged way. And I think now we've reached this point. That's a fair challenge for next year's target.
What we didn't have this year, Ms. Nixon, we didn't have our performance management guidance in place. So actually that was launched will be launched in January, it was agreed a couple of weeks ago. So actually going forward into the new year, it's clearly set out, how do I have the conversation, what does it look like, what are we discussing here? And hopefully
So we've got a level playing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The question I had as well, given that sort of last year was 66.9, would have been affected the target, so the stretch. Thomas?
Just a question about the engagement processes that we've gone through, consultation and engagement activities. Just, this is just, I noticed this one on the dementia panel, through the Newport citizen panel. And it says that you've managed to improve working with GPs. Now, as a lot of my constituents tell me they can't even get to the point with the GP, I just wondered what miracles we've been able to perform with that one.
I mean, I guess firstly, I'm going to say we're only responsible for the engagement bit of that. I don't want to take credit for what other services are doing.
Who came back with then?
Jan, do you have a detail on what improvements there are, or should we come back on that separately?
We can come back separately, because some of that is that awareness raising,
Right.
but we can come back.
Okay, because they're not normally everybody to
Yeah, it's not about appointments. I don't think it's more about understanding. When somebody does go to
appointment to be far too big.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm pleased to see support for carers has been featured in there as well, and obviously community hubs, and this wider engagement of our citizens. So thank you.
Councillor Pym, one on living wage study. Is it one for you, Tracy, or how's it going to work?
I think that's why it's amber actually, because there's more work needed in that space. So thanks for raising that. I meant to mention the intro. So there's a commitment in the corporate plan. So it is a kind of commitment made by the administration, but we do need to look at that carefully. First, in order to be a living wage city, NCC has to be a living wage accredited employer. So we have to lead the way there. And while we might pay our own staff living wage, we would need to do an audit of third parties and how third parties are paying their staff. So there's a knock-on effect there, which may or may not be a challenge, because some of those things are budgeted. For example, in social care, we already pay those kinds of rates, but we may not pay that across all suppliers. So that's the first challenge. And then the second challenge is, what does that look like for organisations across the city? Do they need to do and commit to? So we're working on that piece with the university, USW, to do a piece of work and some research with organisations to say, what would that impact be? Is the time frame realistic? Does it remain an aspiration? Does it need to be a longer term aspiration? So there's more work to be done in that space.
Yeah, it's a great question, Councillor Pym. It's a political commitment by us, but it will come at costs. I mean, that's the reality here. And I think the big issue, we want to encourage at the same time SMEs locally to get our business, but they're probably the least likely, if I'm being unfair, to be able to stomach some of the living wage costs, if I can be blunt about it. So, you know, we don't want to create a situation, an unintended consequence where we only allow the big operators to get our business, because they're the ones that can afford the living wage, will pass on the costs so they can cover their margins, where an SME is always fighting to survive or doing well, but will eat all their margin if suddenly they have to adhere to that policy. So it's a difficult balance, but we're working on it.
Are we ever going to subsidise it through funds? No, but
I'm sure they would love us anyway. No plans to, if I'm being honest. We would hope to encourage all employers through honey rather than the stick to you know, if we're offering business and part of the deal is you pay the living wage to staff, it's a quid pro quo, isn't it? But it's about getting that message right and that engagement piece right, rather than offering subsidies. Because if we offer subsidies, then we start skewing the market, and then you could get all sorts of pickles with taxpayers' money.
Is that form part of the procurement review that we sort of mentioned earlier? So, our PQQ or ITT would require the organisation that we're procuring from to be a living wage employer. Is that the intention here?
And I guess I don't know if that's the solution, but we are working really closely with procurement. So there's a kind of whole organisation discussion around that, which will include which the procurement leads and Janice and colleagues to look at what does that mean and what are the challenges, so we can really work that through. That does sound likely, but we'll work through that now.
It's a very challenging environment, as you sort of led to, and you'd be careful that you don't, as you say, end up with lots of big businesses that can kind of stomach the cost, particularly with sort of, employees' national insurance going up and the context of other sort of rates and stuff. It's something that needs to be carefully balanced, I think. And my own view is how much resource are we putting into that as a council, and is that a priority that we ought to be putting a lot of resource into or not? Posing the question hypothetically, not looking for an answer either way, but from a political point of view, it's admirable, it's the right thing to do, and we would love that as a city, but we've also got to balance that with the services that we're trying to deliver as well. And, could that resource, I don't know how much we put into it, but could that resource be delivering better customer answering times, for example? But,
I guess in terms of the external work with USW, so that's grant funded work there. So it's not, although I could always be used for something else as well. I don't think it really, but it is about really understanding it before we step off fully into that, I think. And then there would then need to be political discussions around how challenging that is. And I would come back to the time frame. 4 years seems like quite a long time, but in terms of transitioning business arrangements, it might not be longer.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's very cognizant in my mind, Jen, just to let you know that one of the small businessmen.
Yeah.
And we know they're feeling the pinch.
Yeah. Comes to do it.
I was just going to add about that. The benefits of the living wage is that workers on the living wage get more. They pay more tax and they will contribute more into the local economy. So
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sold on the benefits. No doubt about it at all. Any other questions? Councillor Horton?
Hi, sorry, Jay. Yeah, I had my hand up. I just want to echo some of the comments that have been made. It would be wonderful. Now, don't get me wrong, all my guys are paid above minimum wage. However, small businesses like mine, we couldn't afford to pay the minimum wage. I don't know if I need to declare an interest at this point, but I'm just speaking from a position of knowledge. It is very, very difficult at the moment, and moving forward, certainly in the next 4 to 5 months, it's going to get even harder. And I really would recommend that we don't, as an organisation, push make it more difficult for the smaller guys to be involved with some of the work the council is doing. I think it would be a very, very bad idea. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Rees?
Yeah, completely separate point for this. Engage on the minimum wage. Page 61.3, but engage in and contribute to key partnership projects for the positive proactive message and communication about the city. Just a question, really, in terms of the Newport City's mayor, obviously he does a fantastic job. They do between 150 and 170 visits every year, depending on timescales, etc. Notification goes out on X, because they've got their own account on X of what's happening with the mayor. The mayor doesn't have a Facebook account, so there's an opportunity, I think, being missed there to promote the positivity of what the mayor does to help with the charities, but also what he's doing for the city of Newport where he's going is schools, or she, they are in schools, they're in hospitals, they're wherever. They're generally promoting Newport City. So I think perhaps it might be a suggestion to look at that. And it's just another way of saying, yeah, we're doing it.
Councillor Corden, did you want to respond to that point specifically?
Yeah, I just wanted to drop in to say hi. The mayor's social media account is actually looked after by Democratic Services on Twitter, and since when I took up the post, much to everyone's I don't know, I wanted to make more of that Twitter account to get more images, to make sure every post that goes out has an image that tells the story and uses the mayor, as you described, Councillor Reeks, as an asset to the cities, like an inner city tourist attraction almost, is how I described him, and ongoing mayors. I think in terms of a Facebook account, it would be, the management of that would be tricky because it's managed through Democratic Services, not through the central comms team, who are amazing and do a brilliant job, but they are to capacity at the moment. So maybe this is something maybe Councillor Clark and I can talk about, away from this, but it kind of doesn't fall under this remit, if that makes sense. Tracy, I'm right there. Yes.
Yeah, that's something I need to pick up with Mike, but I think it's fair to say it is a resource issue on either side, and X Twitter is kind of easier to manage, but that would be a challenge, I think, and not something we need to think about.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say generally, if we're supplied with the photographs, we will upload them.
I think there's a strength of argument for other social media platforms as well. So it's a discussion with the comms team in terms of what's supposed to be.
Yeah.
So we really want to engage the youngsters in the city. You wouldn't be on either Facebook or
No,
would you? So
I can't wait to see Councillor Mockford on TikTok.
Well,
Yes. Looking forward to that one.
It's a challenge. It's all about the positivity. That's what we're going to look at.
so could we take an action back to sort of discuss the comms strategy for the mayor? So, yeah, everyone happy? Okay. Any other questions on this service area? You had one on complaints. Okay, looking on to the rates. So the page 70 of the report. No, that's not. Page 70 of the report. I'll ask you. Sorry. There are in quarter one there are 3 complaints reviewed after assessment, and in quarter 2 there are 2 reviews after assessment. But no complaints received. So Councillor Thomas was a bit confused about that, and sort of, is that a case that we're not logging complaints and refusing them? I think was your question, Kate. Speaking for you.
No, I was just confused by the other way it was presented. Second box down, number of complaints received, quarter 1, stage 1, stage 2 is just the processing that complaint, isn't it? Then quarter 2, 0 and 0, totals 0 and 0, but then number of complaints refused after assessment, 3 in quarter 1 and 2 in quarter 2.
Before you come in on the detail, I just want to say why we get complaints as well, because we're quite an internal service, aren't we? So it's often about things that are council policy. So if something is a complaint against another service, but it's their policy to do things that way, then we get recording that from the corporate centre. So that's the first thing, because actually we're not very exposed to the external complainant.
Can you give us an example of that?
Yeah, I can. So charges to replacement bins.
Right. Oh, yeah.
So that's a council
I've had those
policy.
as well.
Right. So therefore it's logged as a policy thing rather than the service area that brings waste.
It wasn't necessarily they did something wrong.
That's right. So that would be an example of that. So just to explain the types of things that they are.
So yeah, as Tracy's mentioned, so there are various things like so it's not an NCC, it's in another kind of area of jurisdiction, so it's a school or something like that. So there's, within the complaints policy, we identify which thing is a complaint, but say it's a legal process ongoing, etc. So so the numbers that are quoted as 0 are essentially the ones that we need to respond to formally sort of investigation, whereas the ones that you obviously received some, but as Tracy's mentioned, they've been used online with the fact that they're not doing the parameters out back. So again, it's a little bit like some of the conversations we had earlier. Not necessarily the numbers do make sense, but they need
Right.
to sort of.
So what I would be
Explanation.
concerned about there is that the results of that our residents, presumably the majority of those be from residents, they are implied to the logic behind the rationale is described to them.
Yeah, we would point them to the policies.
Right.
Councillor Marcus answered what I was going to say.
Okay. I mean, to me, it just seems like if you've received the complaint, you ought to log the complaint.
Yeah.
So it ought to say 3 and 3, 2 and 2.
Complaint.
Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
you ought to have logged one as received, because there'll be some work that the officer's got to do to determine that we're not going to deal with this with the complaint received. So for me, you ought to log it, and then that's, but it hasn't gone anywhere.
Just as a wider piece, we're ongoing. We are working with the transformation intelligence team about the complaints dashboard, and some of these figures reflect. We are trying to embed complaints within the wider sort of performance framework, but as has been indicated today, the thing we need to just pick a little bit in terms of that.
Yeah, and
so there's complaints received, respond to it. So
to me, the sort of the better measure is how many have been upheld as well. We don't get that data, so I think it's actually is if 100% of the complaints have been upheld and we've got an issue, none of the complaints are upheld, then
And I guess on that, there's a whole annual report on complaints which goes to governance and audit. This is I think this is the first year, or not long after that, the first attempt really at bringing complaints through into individual services. It needs some work for sure.
Yeah.
But previously it wasn't supposed to be told.
It's the first time I've seen it. There's probably some questions on it. So,
This is something I'm really keen on for individual services to understand the complaints and actually see complaints as resources, because the public are telling us something. So it's for us to understand the trends. The best way to understand the trends is to understand the service, then understand those themes. And then if we need to, even if it's not upheld, if we're seeing a surge, we know there's something up, right? So then we need to understand that. And I see data, including complaints, as a resource, just to continually hone our service. So I take your point. We might need to look at how this is presented, but this is a step in the process of us harnessing those complaints and getting more scrutiny, but also us understanding what it's telling us.
And it goes back to the point you made, doesn't it? There's a complaint, but the policy says that do like that. Well, there's still some learning from that. Is the policy right? So as well. So there's a bit of sort of thinking about how do we sort of look at the outcome, because what we don't want is those three are just dismissed because they haven't gone through the complaint. So is there a bit of learning we might pick up from actually the policy's wrong or doesn't suit everybody?
Yeah, if that second line wasn't in there, we would think there were no complaints.
Yeah. We'll pick that up collectively with Sean.
Any other questions on this service area? I just wanted to remind for the asset register that we were sort of raised at the last several meetings, which was sort of committed to by the cabinet members to provide. So I just sort of wanted to keep that on the work programme really as and keep some focus on it as providing that. Bit of work if I can. And the final point I wanted to make was in relation to the sort of website improvements that we're seeing. One of the things I get a lot of feedback, and I notice myself, is that the new website doesn't seem to have much SEO with it. So you'll kind of, for instance, it's actually really hard now to find the planning portal by Google search. So if you search Newport Council Planning, effectively you get Mark, the chair, I've got to surname, Mark Spencer's details as the first line of the search engine.
That's
And
what
like those with
happens
licensing,
you
you search licensing report, you
Yeah.
get Kate's contact details instead of the actual things that you need. So there's some work definitely to be done on the SEOs and sort of what that looks like. And I think it must be a sort of mixture between the old and the new, sort of complicating it. So
Thanks, Chair. And that there's a couple of things going on there. It's a mixture. Sorry,
I would say it's a legacy issue. Obviously, operating in a different way. When people get used to it, that will obviously bump up the list, but we'll see what we can do to
Yeah, so
enhance it in the
the
meantime.
project continues and the project team are currently liaising with the provider because we know the search, and they're two good examples, and there are some others where it just doesn't quite give you what.
Yeah, they're a little too old.
And that is something we're actively working with the provider. So hopefully we'll update on that next time we see.
Yeah.
On both things, actually.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I think on the asset list, I don't know, Tracy, if you want to add any point to it, but it is actively being worked on. North's working on it for us. It's as everything is, not quite as simple as it sounds to produce that list, and we've not had that complete list before, but it is actively being worked on. We talk about it every catch up we have, so I'm going.
Absolutely, along with a kind of what are the information is useful to members that could be presented in, and possibly residents on some of the wider information. So something definitely.
Okay, and we just wrap the recommendations up on this one, Neil.
Well, yeah, case of recreating the staff check-ins. It's good to see managers doing this. Recommended raising the target for next year for the percentage of managers doing check-ins. Discussions of the communication strategy for the mayor. Sorry, Chair, your comment about the complaints received and upheld. We need to look at how the data complaints presented. Is that right?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Was there any other comments, recommendations, if you'd like to make any?
Can I just suggest one that I captured, which was ensuring that the work going forward on the HR policies includes the appropriate risk assessments,
Yes.
and then we'll report back at year end and make sure we pick up on the asset list on the website search facility.
Just having the consideration sort of picture.
I think probably as there's a committee noting the complexity of the living wage proposal, although on the recommendation there is quite a detailed discussion.
Yes, yeah. Thanks very much. Yeah. Everybody else happy? Any other recommendations? No. Thank you, everyone. Grateful. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we'll have a couple of minutes of break. That's okay. And we move on to those minutes.
Chair.
It feels like it feels like a table. Yeah, I can use like a word in like yeah. Maybe it's just a wind hand in the windows. Some musical chairs recently. So the North for my steps. Yes. Sorry. The North next. Oh, no, good.
So it's the waiting for that.
Yes.
Speech or civil ceremonies. Civil partnership ceremonies. Or do they just make it up as they go along? I don't mean that.
We definitely don't think of going along.
That's what I mentioned, it's a written one, because the wording is just wonderful.
Okay, welcome back everyone and welcome to the standards as it is as a service area. We've got the cabinet member present, so if you want to say anything in your introduction, James.
Not fine, actually, let's go straight into it. Try to go into it.
No problem at all. Reece, anything you want to add? No. Over to you then, Mike.
Thank you very much, Chair. So just to say, I'm joined by my colleagues from the service, the interim assistant head of legal services, I'm Howard Blaney, the registration and coroner service manager, Jane Clark, and Catherine has very kindly agreed to stand in for Leanne, who's unfortunately off sick today. Joined by a full complement from the service. In terms of the mid-year review, this is based on the service plan, which was actually thoroughly redrafted very recently, around about September, October time. We produced a new one of these. And that's reflective of the fact that a lot of the objectives in the old service plan had been largely completed. It served its purpose and it was time for it a complete overhaul. And also revised our key performance indicators at the end of the document. Just on those, there is a new one for democratic services, and two new ones for legal services. The two for legal services aren't actually reported in here because they're so new that there isn't any reliable data yet to make any sensible conclusion. But we will have a full set of figures when we do this again in 6 months' time to report back on. The KPIs on the registrars and coroners side are reflective of the statutory KPIs, which are set nationally by the bodies which regulate those organisations. So it makes sense to duplicate it here rather than separate sets for the council. Just to go back to the objectives, it's probably worth taking to page 3 of the service plan, which just sets out the 3 overriding objectives for law and standards. First being to improve the efficiency and cost effectiveness of the service. The second, to work on improving constitutional and corporate governance arrangements, and the third one, to extend and improve the use of technology and modernise working practices. And you'll find as you look through the mid-year review and the service plan, all of the objectives are grouped into those 3 areas to demonstrate how we're doing that. I don't intend to go through those objectives. You'll have the opportunity to read this, and no doubt you'll have some questions on them, which I'll be happy to take in a second. But I think just to say that the aim with these objectives and the KPIs is to look at, in the case of the back office or support services, things like democratic services, legal services, it's tailored at looking at what we're doing for the organisation as a whole in terms of delivering on the corporate objectives, and in terms of the public facing services, the registration and the coroners, the objective is around making sure we're delivering the service that we have to deliver in the most efficient and effective way possible. And just before I conclude, just to draw your attention to the case studies, the achievements at the end of the document. Obviously many of you will be aware that we opened a new coroners court back in September over at Langstone Business Park, Livingstone House. That project, Jane led on fantastically. The project was delivered ahead of schedule and within budget, so that's a real thing that we're really proud of, and the staff are all happy there. They're settling in really well. We've got 2 very happy coroners. Just to add in that service as well, we do have a new area coroner as well now, who is supporting the senior coroner. As East senior coroners workload massively. And the other key achievement was, of course, the elections last year. We had a PCC election and a general election in quick succession against the backdrop of some new legislation. These things are always organised at fairly short notice. Obviously, we knew about the PCC one, but not the general election. I think it's a testament to the elections team. Both of those went off without incident and very smoothly. As I say, Chair, I don't intend to go into more detail, but I'll pause there. I think and take any questions that you might have.
Councillor, any questions for law and standards? Councillor Rees?
Okay. Thanks, Mike. And yeah, I think compliments to the team with the elections on the 2 sets. As you say, new legislation and handled it well, so compliments to the team on that. Just looking at page 81 with your budget forecast 24-25, your forecast is showing way over your budget. Can you just give us a bit of background to the figures, what the situation is for that?
Is that this page, Councillor Rees?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
It's slightly over for a couple of reasons. One is that a new budget management system is being implemented, and it was quite some time before the service manager could get access to that in order to update the figures, which meant we've got a sort of cycle around September. There is also still a bit of a spend on agency staff. It's nothing like what it was last year, but it is leading to a slight overspend. And I think the other thing to say, yes, there is a forecast budget overspend, but that graph doesn't start at 0. It starts at £5,100, and I do think that the way that's presented makes it look worse than it is.
It's supposed to go to the agency staff then.
It's 300,000 now, effectively, isn't it? It's a fair chunk of money.
It is. Is that the forecast through to the end of the year?
Yes, 5,320,000. Yeah, so it's 300,000.
A lot of agency staff.
Is it going to carry on at that rate?
It's not.
You've had more, I heard you've had replacement stuff joining very good recently.
You want to do this?
Yeah, I think, you know, it might be really, you know, bit of analysis on some of the stuff Mike was already talked about the introduction. So, I think the monitoring also see impacted across it, it's not just bikes, it's impacting across organization or something like that. So I think one insight, I think it's probably goes into a brief note, just detailing what that's remember back to last year, it was that's not insignificant, it's still 300,000 across the directorate, was still under the budget. It is not as significant as it was last year. We remember last year with significant costs associated with solicitors, etc. But we feel there were issues with it might be largely resolved this year. It depends on the agency. I would suggest on that is I think some of the agency step for those professional levels of like how particularly more expensive. But I think we probably just need just to do a breakdown of that 300,000.
Yeah, I mean, we did talk in the pre-meeting, suggested because of last year's report might have been sort of local to agency, but it is a sort of big sense. It'd be useful to sort of get a bit of a steer on it. I guess sort of in response to your response to the finance system, what we were hearing from the finance system is that it was all implemented hunky-dory and there wasn't really an impact on anybody. So that sort of an odd to what we were told in the first plan, I guess.
It doesn't actually have a financial impact. I think the issue is two things. One is the finance system. So obviously get used to the system. But the other issue that Myron talked about was that particular issue around the finance team, where he had a lot of people off significantly at the time. That is the finance team that supports place services and corporate services. So actually, some of the financial information that heads of service about the deal, service managers about the deal, has not been as accurate as it should have been, purely because they weren't staff in place in order to do that. But that's starting to pick up. And whilst you're talking about the next thing, I'm going it was sent through by the person who's now come back from the state, so I can tell you what that's spent. Okay. So it's partly the system, mainly though, I think there's a particular issue with particularly impacts on this scrutiny committee with the financial information. That team, but non-SD work related, we're just having a lot of issues with illness, etc. within one particular finance team.
I'm pleased there's some sort of correlation here. The bi-monthly check-ins, I mean, it's good to see that that's headed in the right direction. It's got up to 61.5, but it was down as low as 52.2 in the first quarter. Was that explained because of the practical? I mean, do you count agency staff when you're talking about the check-ins?
I can explain that stat for May 24. That's because I was doing 3 jobs and
right.
20 direct reports, and I simply didn't have time
right.
to do them. Obviously, I've been appointed as the head of service. I've got 2 managerial positions filled up living now that weren't filled before, and that's why that's
right. Nothing to do with the not managing to catch up with agency staff or
no. So the agency staff sit outside of that system, and
right.
generally speaking, we wouldn't.
Include them in the
we do talk to them. I mean, if you've got staff working for you, you have conversations with them, don't you? But they're not part of the formal one-to-one procedure that NCC staff.
Yeah, I had a lovely chat with a very delightful lady from Yorkshire every month who was giving legal advice to the licensing team.
It was Helen, possibly.
No, it'll come back to me later.
Councillor Clark, did you want to?
Yeah, I think just adding to what Mike's just said, and I think it's ability is key now. I think sort of, and you can see that in the way it's gone up, and now we have got a head of service when we've done the cross-party interviews and Mike was appointed. You can see that, and I expect that to increase furthermore. So I think it just shows, and I think that's a really honest chart. You can actually see the growth and it going up. So I think stability is really key of why that's improved.
Thanks, Councillor. Congratulations on your appointment. Thank you, Chair. That's okay. Any other questions? Councillor Rees?
Page 89 might probably more an observation than a question.
Sorry, have you got the page number within the? Sorry, I
think we're working off some different document to.
No, it's all the same. Yeah, we all got some
So page 14.
Page 14.
Yes.
14, yeah.
Right, good. Category the amend report templates for member discussions and then take steps to promote awareness amongst members and officers. First start date, 1st September. You've got 2 expected completion dates, which you've broken down into to do different things. We've got a 20% in green, which is a little bit just confusing because we're looking at, you've got 2 different dates on there of end dates when you want 2 different things, but we've got one overall percentage of where you're at. You know, it's if we don't have 2 possibly separate issues, can we maybe split them out into 2 things so we can voice them just a little bit more research. It's more an observation than a criticism. It's just a little bit confusing what that 20% is actually relating to. I think it's where you're at because you've got a 3-month differentiation between some requirements of the 2 reports there. But it comes back to what you said at the start, where you pretty much started with a clean slate anyway. So just perhaps just an observation.
Yeah, I'll take that feedback on board. I mean, I think that could be sorted out with the horizontal line in the box which will colour and so yeah, happy to take that on board.
Any other questions? I got one for Mike in reference to the general election. It's on page 95. 3 lessons learned are being used to prepare future elections. Is there anything in particular? Or 20 years.
That's all
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
I'm sorry. Lessons learned are being used to prepare future elections. Was there anything in particular, any problems which you encountered in the general election or the PCC elections?
I'll ask if Catherine's got anything to say in a moment, but I'm not aware of any particular issues. But I think after any project like that, you always debrief, don't you? You're going to have conversations, you know, what's the mechanism for using to capture voter ID as efficient as possible, and it's just making sure that we speak to people. I'm not really to any particular issues. I wasn't the count for the general election, and that went exceedingly smoothly. But it's just about taking that step back, and I mean possibly that's something we would do in the run up to the election, so that those lessons crystallised about will feed directly into the planning. So I don't think that should be taken as that there were any particular problems. It's more procedural that we would look at what that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. We didn't really have any issues with voter ID. That was quite good. I think PCC was the first time we were using that legislation. But yeah, there's no real issue reported. The staff seem well trained for polling stations, and that's another thing we've sort of captured in this debrief around the training we've done all about sympathising officers, and we've had some feedback from them about how they can take away and actually think that the e-learning model that we use worked really well because they can fit around their jobs and things like that. We also did polling station at the start of this year, so that is a legislative requirement for these polling station reviews, but it has also helped us sort of assess what venues we're using, if they're appropriate, you know, some access issues, things like that. So we have made some changes to the polling stations that we've used. But yeah, my second was no real problem. But it's just, yeah, it's constant doing it.
Yeah, just again to add on to that, I think what's really important, actually, both elections went well, went very well, but I don't think the team were doing their job if they weren't their own critical friend. So I think they're always looking to improve, because you can. So I think sort of there's definitely a pat on the back for everyone involved, but the way they work, it's their own critical friend to see where things can change for future elections.
Do you have the discretion of the number of staff who man the polling stations and who are at the count? From a point of view of an observer at the count, the PCC election turnout was very low, so we seem to have an awful lot of staff who probably hanging around getting quite bored for most of the day. I do understand that you can't predict, or you'd be unwise to predict what the turnout was going to be at any particular election.
Yeah, I think such is the nature of elections to some extent. I mean, we have to plan for certain eventualities, and if the turnout doesn't live up to that, then I think the argument would be that it's better to be over prepared than under prepared. I think
Just always worry about the budget.
yeah, well, the budget's provided by the department.
Yeah, I thought we'd have to find it out now.
No, it is the funding is supplied.
We charge back.
Oh, right, okay. Well, that's some
Centrally
consolation, isn't
funded.
it?
I mean, the returning officer, that's ultimately the chief executive that does have a discretion as to how many staff to provide and how those staff are deployed. It's within a budget which is set central government, so it's what's in that framework really. And I have to say, if the resource is being provided, I think it'd be well advised to use it, given the potential reputation and impacts of the election not going very well.
Yeah, I agree, and I know that the budget is set by the number of people who register to vote, isn't it? So you know that's what you go on because that's the number, so that's what you need to assume that you get a turnout. So yeah, I mean the department has changed. They just knocked the level up.
Yeah.
At least we didn't have an embarrassing situation like the previous PCC election. We're the only county in we're the only polling station, I believe, in the whole of the UK where nobody turned up to vote at all.
Was that the
on
empty
one
one?
day.
Was that, yeah, that was scary.
No, it wasn't good. No, it was expected.
I think we've all got different views on where it was.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions, Councillor Rees?
We discussed this in the preview, but I'm going to sort of raise it as a question to you, Mike. Page 18, I believe, performance measures. Rate against percentage of council meetings published in 14 days, the date of the meeting. Which is a little concern and a little bit of reassurance here that the fact that you're saying you're looking at using AI to write minutes. Now, I know this has been discussed by group leaders at a different meeting, but I just wanted sort of just to share with the committee, if you would please, sort of the thinking behind it and the sort of the effectiveness of using AI, given obviously the way the council meetings are, they can be not chaotic, but they can be a little bit off the cuff at times.
A couple of things on that. That's 25% of red. We're only just starting on that, and it's a relatively small sample size, so I would anticipate some improvement in that. But with regard to Copilot, which is the AI system that we use, it's one of those things that the more you use it, and the more you train it, the better it gets. And you're right to say that it does have some difficulty with meetings of full council because they tend to follow less of a set pattern than other meetings, if I could put it that way. And you know, they do sometimes struggle with motions and points forward and things like that. But we're working with our system intensively and train it will carry on. I think the thing to say about AI generally is if you look at where AI and this kind of technology was 12 months ago, it was down here. Now it's up here, but it's not a straight line curve, it's an exponential upward curve. So I think it's important that we keep working with that because I think in a relatively short space of time it's going to be doing what we need it to do. Just to say about AI as well, because I know there are concerns, understandably, in some quarters that we can't control what the output's going to be. These minutes are checked, so it's not a complete replacement for human input. People put minutes on the page, the human being will check it, and that will continue for the foreseeable future because we do have to take responsibility for what comes out of that process. So what I would say, what my request would be to members is bear with us whilst we implement this. It will start to improve. You will start to see it improve over the next few months. And when we do get to that point, which I think will address your question?
Yeah, it does. It's just making sure that we are on top of it and not just accepting that AI's can write it and right, it's done it, click and send it out to everybody.
You know, I think in 10 or 15 years' time, that may well be the case, the way the technology is going. It's not at that position at the moment. It's not for the foreseeable future. It's not going to operate in the future.
Yeah, some say that we, you know, it's more, I think we use it more as a transcription tool really at the moment. Feed into our minutes, so our minute takers still get all the notes, and then it's a tool to support them and their work. And then obviously we have a chain of checking and reviewing how it gets published out. It's definitely not.
Yeah, just again to follow on from that. I won't go into technical side of it, but Councillor Reed sort of alluded to the meeting of the political leaders, of the heads of the political parties, where there was a meeting, and everyone who turned up there, what I would say was a very honest and open conversation about a lot of subjects, and I know those meetings are going to continue with Mike and the team and myself involved. So sort of hopefully that's a step in the right direction. If we're getting everything right, it was a very honest and open, and sort of a lot was discussed and getting to agreement around the table. Yeah, it's fair mention. Any other questions for anybody? I just wanted to pick up one if I can.
Yes.
And find the page, sorry. Your page number 15. Just another one, templates really. I guess you haven't started on it because it's 0%. Yeah, comments saying review pending. Sort of timescales are 6 months. How are you going to do that within 6 months? Was my sort of preview, or should that be an amber? Perhaps because you haven't started it yet.
I wouldn't object to it being an amber. I mean, we've got, as you can see from this, we've got a number of projects on the go at the moment. Yeah, going to happen at the same time. I am having a meeting about this in a couple of weeks, actually, with certain colleagues to try and get this process started off. I think once that is started, it probably won't take too long to do. I mean, there will need to be some consultation with officers and members, but I don't anticipate that being a particularly long-winded project. So I think that completion date is achievable when we get started in the new year. But yeah, I wouldn't expect that being amber on the basis that it starts.
We should pick up the end of the series review at the end of the year. See if we've got to. That's fair enough. Any other questions? Fantastic.
We'll get a note on that finance question.
Yeah, okay. Did you want to come in on it then? Yeah, you want to?
Just to go back to the agency staff spend, just having a look at the budget, I think that was based on the number of the agency staff in the year, and fast and reduced. So that 300,000 is never going to be, we're never going to get to 300,000, but it's always all that. That's really much it. Not by the end of the
Well, yeah.
So just remember, so you have your budget, and we have so you look at it in forecasted expenditure. So in September, because that was based on September, that was the forecast based on the agency expenditure at that point. By the end of October, that's come down by £27,000. So that will, so by the time this comes back, so we'll do more detail. Yeah, so I don't think it's anticipated. The budget expenditure is going to be wildly different than the actual budget. So, okay. But thanks for the question, because it looked a bit odd on when I looked at it, it looked a bit odd. And yes,
Recommendations now?
Just one that might concern about breakdown of the overspend and customer usage comment page 8 of the amended report templates, just presentation of the rest.
Yeah.
Is there any other comments or recommendations coming from Mike?
I'd just like to note the committee's congratulations to the team on successfully getting the coroner's court open and sorted in budget, which is a good achievement in this day and age.
And the budget.
That's what we have. Yeah, on time on budget is about for any kind of project. But so it's
Court vacate this building entirely now.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Chair. Thank you. We'll just wrap up with the main agenda items once everybody's set. Okay. Okay, thanks everyone. So we've got a Neil Scrutiny advisor report now.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just a couple of actions we're waiting from housing law standards. The Anagos, the answers report was which back in, just chasing up the date for the regular meeting. With the next 2 meetings, in 2 weeks, we've got the second round of the mid-year. This will be the place section, so like the 4 service areas for that. And then the meeting after that will be the first round of the budget proposals. As members of aware, last year we had the 7 service areas in the meeting and it went on. Yeah, so we thought this time around we're experimenting, split it into 2. The first meeting that will be the 16th at 2 o'clock. That'll be the place proposals, and then on the 22nd of January will be the corporate proposals. So just to update the committee as well, on the 19th of February, we're looking to have the rapidly housing transition plan come, and currently waiting on the date for the high risk asset management plan. We're looking at a date possibly around the 10th of March, but just waiting to confirm that date with Stephen. As soon as I confirm the date, I'll advise the committee chair.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, for which one? The high risk asset management?
Yeah, it's
Well, we've
going
been
to
waiting
include-
for a long time for this.
Yeah,
It's
it's
been-
going to
yeah.
include the plans to adopt roads on the new estates.
I'm not sure it goes into detail in terms of specifics, but let's, you know.
Well, we
let's have
must
a look at it,
see
yeah.
at
We
least
do-
have
we
the
do
statement
have
on
a
the
plan at
direction
the
of things, because I'm fed up with this. We've got 10 years now with the Mondo.
Yeah, I mean, you've got the same issues
It's
on my
not going to
estate.
solve anything when the council take it over, you know, but that's not how our residents see it. They think the world's going to be an entirely better place when which is quite a compliment.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we have got a high risk asset management plan at the moment, so this isn't a new thing. It's just the current one expires in 2025, and there are public consultation requirements, as I understand it.
Right.
There are certainly scrutiny consultation
Oh,
requirements.
that's
but
what they need
I
to be
think there
feeding
are
into,
also,
isn't it?
yeah. So, and it's also, you know, it was due 18 months ago, and I did express the committee's dissatisfaction of how long it's taken. You'll recall that this was in the diary for last June or July, and it had to be moved because of the general election and the PERDA requirements. So I was particularly frustrated then that they said it wasn't ready, when I was like, well, you told us it was ready in June, and the only reason it didn't go ahead was because the meeting couldn't go ahead. So it's taken long. It's a really emotive subject for our residents. They get here all the time.
Well, you've got
about
the state the new
potholes and-
estates, but you've got the new estates.
Yeah, we've got the same issue as you, you know,
Yeah.
the state highway is longer than 10 years, still hasn't been adopted.
What's
So,
what's the thing like?
it's been okay
It's been
at the
alright.
moment, but yeah, it's the flood defences were increased when they built our estate, but you know, I'm not sure how long they're gonna last. So, yeah, it's always a worry. Okay, anything else on any of that?
That's it from my report, chair. It's just in the minutes of September.
So when we come to the February meeting, after the budget meetings, we'll need to look at our forward work programme for next year. So if people could have a think about what might be incorporated into that. We obviously made a note of the recommendations around HR today as well. So we'll include that, but anything else people think that we ought to be giving some focus to.
If it's on the agenda, it'll be a reminder to us.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay, minutes of the previous meeting. Any issues? We happy to accept them as a true record? Yeah, I'm looking at Chris, but you were near me.
I wasn't here,
No.
so.
Okay, so that's it. Just take the next meeting then.
Just a quick one, mate. Is it worth talking about changing the format, perhaps having some breaks in between each meeting? for anyone else's view. Oh, is everyone happy? Just going straight through, and everyone here at the same time. Because a lot of people seems to be waiting around for hours, don't they? It just seems. Could we do it better? A little bit more organisation, or is everyone happy?
My take on it would be, I think we were, I think, 50 minutes to do the first service, then nearly an hour to the second, and then more was done in probably half an hour. So it's difficult to predict how long we can spend on.
Well, the last one is always.
Well, that's why I changed the order as well.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
we're giving full
Yeah.
attention.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
So at the end of your reviews, law will go first. Then,
Yes,
yeah.
I think that might be a good idea.
So if everyone's happy.
Yeah.
No, I mean, there's two.
Maybe grab a coffee.
Yeah, there's too many, I mean, there's an awful lot of officers in this room as well.
Yeah, that's what I think.
And this is a lot of money, isn't it? There is a lot of money sitting there. And if that's otherwise used for resources, if a lot of them don't say
From that
anything.
perspective, no, I would agree with you, Alex, that we ought to have maybe a bit more, even if it's standard to have an hour for each
2
one.
o'clock, yeah, so we put in 45 minutes, 50 minutes, and then we have a 10-minute break then. Go to the toilet, try and come
I
back.
think we could schedule them by the hour because
Yeah.
it's actually an hour each service.
There used to be a good practice guidelines when I was working with the voluntary sector, and this was to do with getting members, ordinary people involved with groups. It was considered not good to be seen to have meetings that went on more than an hour without a break, because you'd actually make some quite discriminating.
We spoke Estonia as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
I certainly agree with the break.
Yeah, just because, we can't, in the context of the voluntary sector, we're thinking of some people who came and sat on boards, maybe people with disabilities representing certain sections of the community. And we don't know what their particular issues are, but it might, but it's assumed that, you shouldn't go too hard on people who aren't, they don't do this as a full-time job, and an hour was seen to be the maximum.
I mean, I'm happy to sort of trial by the end of service review, split it around by an hour.
Yeah.
What might happen is we might do one less than an hour.
That's what,
And
just.
we're then waiting
the last
around for
one.
people to turn up. And that's where the frustration might be.
Could we have the shortest one last then, and then we can finish then?
Well, we're happy, the shortest one is always last, because I think we're worn out by now.
It's in, yeah, any other
Any
comments? on that?
comments from the remotely? Anybody got any ideas on that online?
Opinions? No.
Alan's trying to say something.
No, I got no strong opinions on that.
Experiment on it. What do you think? Honestly, do you prefer?
Let's just this area.
Yeah. Oh, the budget one.
Yeah,
Just, yeah, the budget.
Yeah. If everybody's happy, Neil and I will get our heads together and try and work out something and we'll sort of propose the next budget one.
Yeah.
Because
It's
it's
not-
not right to
yeah.
have
It's got,
some people sitting there for 3 hours.
but it's also,
It's not fair on them, is
we
it?
should not be feeling quite as worn down by the meetings either. It's not-
Yeah, well, that's why we
We-
moved
we-
these
we-
meetings
yeah, we
to
don't-
earlier.
yeah, we
Because we
don't
were here
get-
till 9,
we don't
these
get
guys are here till 9 o'clock.
And can we have tea, coffee, biscuits as well?
That's something you have
Oh,
to
there's
speak
tea,
to the
no,
expert.
there's tea and coffee down the road, but there's never any proper milk.
Yeah, I think we can end the meeting now. Neil and I will sort of bring a proposal for dealing after the next meeting. if that's okay. Thanks all. Have a good Christmas.